So in this module, we're going to see how we can actually do something effective like centering text on the screen. We're going to use what we used in what we did in the previous module, which was retrieving the canvas width and the canvas height, and we're going to use that in conjunction with retrieving the width of the text itself that we want to display. So similar to what we did with the canvas width and canvas height, I'm going to create two more containers or variables to store the text width. Or sorry, just one more. I'm not going to worry about the text height. That can be done the exact same way. But for now, we're just going to retrieve the text width. So var text width is equal to, well, what is the functionality for that? We're going to go over to helper.js and see what we created for it. Get text width. It requires two parameters, the text that I'm getting the text width for, and what the font style in. Of course, the font style is important because that sets the size of the text itself as well as the font. If I didn't know that information, it'd be impossible for me to actually retrieve an effective number. Now, that being said, the font style is optional. It's an optional parameter. If we don't supply the font style parameter, what it'll do is it will use the currently set or the default font style. Now, you've seen in the previous code in my main.js, I've set it here to 30 pixels Century Gothic, but I'm doing this command before this is set. So I'm going to have to supply it. So I'm going to set that up again. So I'm going to say get text width. Well, what text am I going to display? Let's just do something simple. Let's do hello world. Hello world. And we're going to say what's the font style? Well, it's going to be 30 pixels of Century Gothic. Now, just to make sure that we actually got that information, let's display it on the screen. So we're just going to copy and paste this just to keep our lives a little simpler. And we're going to put that out. And here we're going to say text width. And change that to text. And get rid of all the rest of the stuff afterwards. We don't need that. Let's decrease the height of this so we can actually see it on top of that. We're going to save, and we're going to come back into here, and if we hit F5, there's our text width. We see that the text width of hello world is 172.8 roughly pixels for that output. Now, these decimals, of course, you can't have a fraction of a pixel. So those types of things are typically rounded off for mathematical calculations within our centering and whatnot. So don't worry about those. That's not really the problem at this point. So we're going to use that information along with this information to center our hello world on the screen horizontally. So instead of outputting the text width this time, because we don't need to anymore, we're actually going to output our hello world. So hello world, let's get rid of this. Oops. Exclamation mark. Now it's the X and the Y that matter. We'll just leave that at 400 because it's a fine location in terms of its vertical location. All we really care about is centering it horizontally at this point. So in order to do this, I got to think about this logically. So let's kind of clear out a bit of this. Now if our screen looks like this, and this is the origin, 0, 0, and this is the canvas width, this is the canvas height, I know that somewhere I have some text, hello world, which has a specific width. If I want to center this text on the screen, that means I got to find the center point of the screen. But if I just placed hello world here, it would look more something like here, like this. And that's not centered on the screen. I want it actually centered, which means I need to find the center of the screen, which is the canvas width divided by 2. So that's canvas width divided by 2. And I need to find the center of the hello world, which is the text width divided by 2. So the whole thing divided by 2 here. So that point divided by 2. So if I take the canvas width divided by 2 and I subtract the text width divided by 2, that should give me the proper X location. So let's take a look at this. Let's give that a go. So we're going to come back here. We're going to say canvas width divided by 2. We're going to subtract from that text width divided by 2. Now hopefully this will give us a nice centered version of Hello World. We run our program. And there we go. That looks pretty centered. Eyeballing and it looks pretty accurate. Now what if we wanted to center it vertically? Well, to center it vertically, let's try and do the exact same strategy we just did a second ago. We don't really need to retrieve the text height because we're setting the height right there. We know what it is. If we didn't, there would be something else wrong. So we know that half of the height is 15. So if I did, for over here, if I did the canvas height divided by 2, and I subtracted the 15, not the text height. I don't have a text height variable. I know the text height is 30. Text height divided by 2 is going to give me 15. So I'm going to subtract 15. Now if I do this, and we go back to the program and we run it, we kind of lost everything here, which means we have an error. And we have our canvas height divided by 2. Oh, it's because I spelt it wrong. Save that, go back. Again, now I can clearly see that this isn't actually centered. This is definitely not correct. Something's wrong. Well, let me show you what's wrong. There's a bit of a difference in the way that the graphics are handled for text than they are for regular things like rectangles and everything like that. So see this here? That's not true. That's actually wrong. So our rectangle is correctly here, but the text width will give us the left-hand side of this imaginary box that surrounds our hello world. But the thing is, as opposed to everything else being the top left corner of reference, our rectangles, our everything, our lines and everything like that, for the text, it's actually the bottom left for some reason. And to be honest, I'm not sure what that reason is, but what that means is that when we try and subtract the text height, we're actually going, or half the text height, we're actually going in the wrong direction. So we need to add. We need to add our text height divided by 2. So we're going back in here. We're just going to change this to a plus. And this should change things enough to give us a more effective result. And that looks like it's both centered vertically as well as horizontally. So that's how we center text within JavaScript. Just to give the people who are looking at this from home how this actually worked, essentially I just grabbed the height and there's this handy measure text option that I just used, and I grabbed the width from that property over there. I made sure to save the graphics context before and then return it back to its original state afterwards, because I was manipulating the font style and I don't want to break the rest of the program. So that is how we handle text centering.